Tonight on Hibernian Radio, we're joined by Kevin Ryan, a Marine veteran, teacher, candidate for United States Senate. Kevin grew up in Orland Park, attended Marist High School, and has dedicated his life to service both in the classroom and on the battlefield. After deployments to Afghanistan and earning graduate degrees from Oxford and Georgetown, he's now back home, stepping up the fight for working families, veterans, and students across Illinois. Kevin's campaign is focused on ending the influence of big money in politics and bringing bold, bottom-up change to Washington. You can learn more about his campaign with runwithkev.com. Kevin Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Grew up in Orland Park, attended Marist High School. Let's talk a little bit about your family influences and the community and teachers around you in your upbringing.
Sure.
When did you graduate from Marist High School?
2010.
You're 33 years old then.
Yes, I am.
I didn't just do the math in my head. You told me before the break, so I don't want our listeners to think that I'm too bright here. I'm thrilled that you decided to come on. Why did you decide? Well, let's talk a little bit. I'll ask you about your foray into politics in a moment, but I just want to talk about your family upbringing.
Sure.
How many people grew up in your family?
So I had 3 siblings.
Okay. Yourself, you have a brother, Pat, who's part of your story. We'll get to him later. And who are your other siblings?
Then the next one is an older brother, Mike, and then older sister, Caitlin.
Okay. And what did your parents do?
So my dad is in sales and did logistics, and then my mom was she worked in the Catholic Church for her whole life. So she did choirs and liturgy planning and things like that.
And what parish were you guys a part of growing up?
So St. Mike's in Orland, and then my mom transferred to St. Barnabas in Beverly.
Okay. And so where did you go to grammar school? Did you go to St. Mike's?
I went to St. Mike's, yeah.
Okay, and then so from St. Michael's to Marist High School. Anybody else in your family go to Marist? What drew you to Marist?
Yeah, my dad went there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a legacy.
Right. Both my brothers went there as well. My dad's brothers went there. It was kind of cool for me and my dad because it was like the school had not changed a lot by the time I was there. In fact, my brother was the last all-guy graduating class, so he got to see like the end of an era.
Yeah.
And I was like as a freshman, I was this first year at Marist where it was all co-ed. So we had the old era and the new era.
What year was that?
So I started in 2006. So
okay.
So 2006 was the first
co-ed year.
Class. Yeah.
Were you excited for that?
As an 8th grader, you don't really know what you don't
You're stepping into.
You don't know the difference between whether it's a all guy school or co-ed. But,
sure.
I certainly enjoyed my time at Marist.
Did you play sports at Marist?
I did. I did track and cross country mainly, and then I wrestled for a few years as well.
Right on. And where did your interest? Obviously after Marist, you went to U of I. Mm-hmm. What'd you go to U of I to study?
To be a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what drew you to the teaching profession? Who were your mentors growing up that inspired you? So
a lot of that actually goes back to like the story of my brother Pat, which you said you're going to bring up later. But
yeah, we can bring it up now.
Yeah. So Pat had a little bit of a rough go, and he suffered from mental illness and treated himself, self-medicated, which resulted in addiction to various drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that made life at home kind of difficult. He would steal things. He'd make my parents fight. He'd make our family fight.
And he was the oldest of your siblings?
No, he was the middle child.
Middle child,
yeah,
okay.
So my sister was the oldest, and then my brother is a year younger. They're Irish twins.
Okay.
And then I'm 3 years younger than Pat.
Okay.
And so he and my brother and sister were at college for most of this. So
all right, when this started rearing its head,
right. So it was a lot of time. It was like me alone
at home.
Yeah, because my mom would work late, and so would my dad, and they'd get home late, and so a lot of I spent a lot of one-on-one time with Pat, and it was kind of a combative relationship. And
between you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he would steal stuff. He would like basically bully me.
No, I get it.
Yeah. And so he made life at home kind of hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so during that time, I had teachers who really helped me kind of get through it, and some coaches as well.
Yeah.
And because I didn't talk to anyone, I just kind of bottled stuff up.
Right.
Because at this time he was going in and out of rehab, and every time he came out of rehab, we thought it would be better, and it never was. And
then simultaneously, your parents are trying to shelter you from the situation, I presume, a little bit.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a little bit difficult time in high school. And, a lot of people have difficult times in high school.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I learned. Once I started to open up about it, that's like we all have these unique stories
sure.
Of like trials and things like that. But it was the teachers that I had in high school that really kind of,
That you felt you could talk to about it.
yeah, I'm like, this is really cool. Like the impact that they're having on my life. And so that kind of pushed me towards going to education in college.
Cool. And then what did you have a central, like a subject that you were interested in wanting to teach and study?
Yeah, so I chose history because it's my favorite subject. And I think that's important for teachers out there, for prospective teachers, to make sure that you're getting into teaching because you want to teach,
Yeah.
not because you love a subject and you don't know what else to do. And because I did run into some people like that who just majored in history and then they didn't really know what to do, and so they became teachers. Not to say that they're bad teachers or anything. It's just I think it's important that you start with like, I want to be a teacher, and then pick whichever subject you think you'll be best at. Yeah,
sure.
So I loved history. History's always been a guide, still a guide for me today in the campaign. And so I chose to major in history and minor in education, and I became a licensed teacher out of U of I.
So and then you went to the Marine Corps, but were you teaching before you decided to make the decision to enter the Marine Corps?
So I did my student teaching at U of I.
Okay.
I student taught at Danville High School, and but that was part of my graduation requirement. So as soon as I graduated, 2 weeks later, I left for officer candidate school, and so I taught for a little bit in my clinicals and as a student teacher, but then went off to a year of training with the Marines. And when I returned, that's when I started teaching in Chicago.
At what point did you say to yourself, I want to be in the Marine Corps, and why?
That's, it's an interesting question that a lot of people ask me, and I don't have that good answer about like,
Yeah.
I just had this epiphany moment or something was a calling. But I remember the day that it happened. I'd always kind of thought about serving in the military. I wanted to enlist out of high school. My parents...
You did?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so it was on top of the mind.
Yeah. And my parents pushed me to go into college first.
Yeah.
I said, all right, so I'll go into college and...
Got into a good one.
Yeah, U of I. I mean, it's...
Great school.
It's a great school. I love it.
Yeah.
Every time I go back there, it's a very, very special place in my heart. But then one day at U of I was going for a run, and it was raining, and I ran by a recruiting office, and I stopped, and...
You're like, let me talk to these guys for a
Yeah, I
minute.
turned around. I was like, just popped inside. I'm like, well, let's just see what they have to say. Fast forward a couple of years, and there I am at boot camp, and I'm like, well, how did I get here?
What did they have to say? You said, well, I'm going to be a teacher, but I'm interested in the Marine Corps. Is there something for me here? And what was their answer?
Yeah, so at the time it was pretty interesting because they were launching a new recruiting effort to build up the reserves with young officers. Typically in the reserve, you have to do active duty first to be an officer. You do 4 years active duty, and then you go in the reserve, and if you want to continue on the reserve, you can. But they were finding that there were not a lot of company grade officers like lieutenants and captains who would be serving in the reserve, so they started to directly commission them. So I directly commissioned into the reserve, and that's kind of like how they got me. They were like, well, yeah, you want to be a teacher? That's great. You can be a teacher and a Marine Corps officer at the same time with this direct commission in the reserve. And to me, that was a really cool way to serve both like your local community and the nation.
Right.
And so I was like, that sounds great. Let's do it.
So you signed up.
Signed up.
Right
yeah.
there. Did you talk to your parents about it beforehand at all?
No.
Just went ahead and did it?
Yeah, I remember.
Was your dad like, what are you doing?
I remember when I told my mom, and she said, I was like, Mom, I joined the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
And she said, you can't do that.
Did you have family members that were part of in the service?
I had a cousin who was in the Army.
Okay.
But aside from that, not really, besides like my grandparents.
Yeah. So it was a much bolder decision because most guys that go into the service usually have someone at home that is leaning on them that is a proponent of going into the service.
Right. Well, and I guess I will say one thing why it was always on my mind in high school and college is because I had friends that enlisted out of Marist, and I had friends who were, while I was at U of I, were getting deployed, and I guess I had that feeling in the back of my mind, like, why them and not me?
Sure.
And so that's probably the best answer I have of what was like driving me forward. But yeah, I remember when I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I joined the Marine Corps, and she said, you can't do that. And I said, well, I already did.
Well,
I mean,
it's because it's a pretty volatile time in our country. I would presume,
Yeah.
You know, and we're still in those times, but typically that's a harder recruitment time for the services to go find articulate, educated servicemen.
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting time.
Now, you go into the service, and then you're in, where do they send you? Quantico, right?
Yes.
For officer school. How long did that last?
So I was in Quantico for about 13 months. You do 10 weeks of officer candidate school, 6 months of basic officer course, which is learning basic infantry tactics, and then I did another 3 months at infantry officer course to become an infantry officer.
And then when you complete that, because it was kind of a reserve program, you come back home to Chicagoland, and you can start teaching again. But in the event that you're called, you just have to upend everything and go, right?
Right. So I finished. I was active duty for that 13 months, and then came home,
Right.
and got a job teaching at a public charter school in Bronzeville.
Mm-hmm.
And I taught. It was actually great. It was right on State Street, and my classroom faced the Dan Ryan and Sox Park, so I could, I could see the fireworks going off and like know if the Sox won or not. So that was really fun teaching that. I love teaching that area.
Mm-hmm.
But while I was teaching, I did get mobilized.
Okay.
So around December, I left that school and deployed to like a crisis response unit in Southern Europe.
Okay.
And then from there, we got activated to go into Africa to do a embassy support mission.
So you were in it. Yep.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, wasn't like, I wasn't Jason Bourne doing it. But,
Sure.
Yeah, but
nonetheless, you got what you asked for and signed up for, I presume, right?
yeah, at the time.
Some guys sign up and then they don't get any action, right? And
Yeah, it was kind of cool. I was a second lieutenant still, and rarely do you see second lieutenants kind of deploying at that time to the places that I was going to. So it was cool to get that experience at very early rank.
Mm-hmm. And how did your other Marines receive you as someone who doesn't come up through, as a grunt and is college educated when you first show up?
Yeah, well, what was interesting is we had a little bit of a Frankenstein platoon because they kind of threw this thing together last minute, and it was very young.
Okay.
So it kind of made sense that I was very young. So the platoon commander was very young. My platoon sergeant was very young.
Right.
I didn't even have any sergeants. I only had corporals, and they were young. But they were, and then all the Marines, themselves were all very young. But they all did phenomenal jobs. And my corporals were, and one of them promoted to sergeant while I was there. They were phenomenal corporals and great NCO and squad leaders. But yeah, we were all kind of figuring it out together.
Yeah. Would you encourage young people to enter the service today after your experience?
Yeah, I would. But I would say it depends on each individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of conversations with students about this. And I firmly believe that there is no lever of social mobility in the world quite like the United States Armed Forces.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I wish there were other levers to use that didn't require military service, but
Yeah.
you want to talk about an opportunity for someone that can come from absolute abject poverty in rural America or somewhere in a rough neighborhood in a major city. They can just sign up for a job, then they can go work at that job for 3 or 4 years. They have income, they have housing, and then they get 4 years of college tuition paid for plus housing.
Yep.
Then they get they can get VA medical coverage if they qualify, and they can if something happens to them, they can get a VA disability claim, which will be a little bit of supplemental income to help them. I mean, the benefits for veterans, it's a great opportunity to raise people out of poverty.
Right.
And that's why I say I wish there were other levers to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't necessarily require military service, but I think military service does sometimes get a stigma as that if almost as if the military is trying to target low-income communities and send these people to war.
Right.
I don't think that is a reality, and I think in fact it's one of the great opportunities for people coming from low-income neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at, especially now, we're in a relative peacetime. Only about, I think, somewhere around 30% of people who joined the military saw combat, and a larger portion that were deployed to combat zones. But it's not everyone. Like, you could join the military and never leave the United States. And I have this one student in particular that comes to mind that he joined the Army and he did it like an admin role, and it was great for him. And I knew that he should not be in a combat role. He should be in a combat unit, and we talked about it. But he joined the Army, became an admin guy, and now he owns a house that he used the VA home loan guarantee to get. He used the GI Bill to get an education. It's a phenomenal lever of opportunity for people to use. And so for that reason, I think it's a great opportunity for anyone to take advantage of. And I would like to, part of the reason why I'm running for office is I would like to expand that beyond just military service. I would like to open up opportunities of service that are not just military service, because I don't think the military has a monopoly on service, and there's many forms of service that should be celebrated, rewarded, and benefits should be provided for. But so that's a long-winded response to yes, I would recommend people to join the service.
No, okay, cool. And so, I mean, reflecting from your time deployed, how did it change you from before you went over? Was there any way, sort of self-reflection where you said, I've learned something about myself that I think I can take back into teaching that is useful and will help me inspire the next generation of leaders?
There was, I think, more so in my second deployment. The first deployment was, like I said, a lot of us still trying to, I was trying to get my feet underneath me as a second lieutenant, and I had a lot of great experiences there, but I was very young still. I think after my deployment to Afghanistan as a captain, when I returned from that, that's when I started to look at a bigger picture and say, there's other ways that I can contribute to my community. And I've always believed that I'm going to go back to teaching at some point. I'm a substitute teacher now at CPS during the campaign, which I can't wait to get back in the classroom. But we all know subs are not the same as teaching full time.
Sure.
But I look back at all the experiences I've had from both my deployments, from graduate school, for working in DC, and I really can't wait to get back in the classroom to teach like government and politics and history, because I have lived it.
Yeah,
right? I haven't just read the textbooks, but I've been in the Pentagon, I've been in the Capitol.
Yep.
I've worked in the Treasury Department. And I've seen how the bureaucracy works. I've seen how the legislative branch and the executive branches work, and those experiences just really help you fully understand something a lot more, and that just makes you a better teacher.
I agree. You leave, so you came back, but then you went to Oxford and Georgetown. Let's talk about how that whole situation occurred.
Yeah.
You get out, and which one came first, Oxford or Georgetown?
Oxford, yes.
Okay.
So I applied to both at the same time. So when I was in Afghanistan, is when President Trump signed like the tentative ceasefire agreement, even though the ceasefire wasn't really that real on our end. It's just that the Taliban wasn't shooting at us anymore. It was now ISIS, the same people, just different hats.
Right.
So we weren't doing as many active operations, and so I started to apply to graduate schools, kind of seeing some of the things that I saw on the ground and kind of some of the failures in Afghanistan, thinking like, okay, maybe it's time for other people to step up and try to make a difference in policy. And so I wanted to get involved in policy.
Okay, so public service was on your mind at that point while you were there.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I got to do something higher than this. I got to, okay.
Right, because I think most people who had deployed to Afghanistan, especially after the initial OEF-1, can tell you, like, what are we doing here?
Right.
None of this makes sense. Like,
well, mission one is get out alive.
Yeah,
right.
Right. Yeah.
And then,
but that was our whole mission there. Our whole mission was essentially don't get blown up. And it's kind of like, what's the purpose of us even being here? What are we?
right.
And then we saw with the withdrawal of Afghanistan, and that was a disaster.
Yep.
And it all culminated in that point about how all these failures kind of came out at once with the withdrawal. And so
you applied to Oxford.
Yeah.
Got in.
Yeah.
Go over there and study for how long?
That was a year program.
Okay, 1 year program. And then how do you wind up at Georgetown after that?
So I applied to both at the same time, and
Okay.
I got into both, and I got into a few other schools too, but I decided I wanted to go to Georgetown, so I accepted Georgetown's offer. And then Oxford came out later because the British higher education, they do things a little bit more slower. They say they're modern being in the 19th century. So we got the letter a little bit later, and I was able to defer Georgetown, and so I went to Oxford first.
Okay. So then you land in D.C. at Georgetown. When does the political bug really start to take shape for you?
So I did an internship on the Hill for a few months while I was a student, and I think similar to the military, the political bug, as you say, is something that's kind of always been in the back of my mind. And I think it's kind of a shame that people don't talk about it more. and that like if you express a desire to run for public office, it's almost as if like, oh, you're full of yourself, or like you're only narcissists want that. I think it's something that should be something positive that people should want to aspire to do. I mean, it's the whole reason of we celebrate Independence Day and fly American flags, right? It's not for the country, it's for this concept of a country, right?
Yes.
And so I've always been interested in it. And in DC, while I was at Georgetown, I got involved with the Veterans PAC that helps recruit and train veterans for running for office. And so I did that, and I kind of learned some of the tools of the trade and got a little behind the scenes knowledge on like, how elections work. But I still wasn't ready to do it yet. I was just kind of gearing up, like, to see if like the opportunity would be right, if ever.
You're a younger guy, going up against people that I presume are much, much older than you. I think it's probably an advantage at this point for you. What sort of issues are you tackling that you think some of your other respected candidates are not?
Well, the best example of that is money in politics. And Democrats love to say that we need to end Citizens United, we need to take money out of politics, we need spending limits, we need publicly funded elections. But nothing ever happens, and even more so in our primaries, they don't take money out of politics. So when you look at, of the three major opponents, one of them has amassed over $23 million for the primary election.
Yeah.
And so how can you say we want to take money out of politics and then raise $23 million because you want to be senator that badly?
It's not them that want him to be. Big tech.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, donations, political donations are investments. And I knew a member of Congress very well from my time in DC, and he even told me he calls them investors. They're investments. I mean, people don't give money, like corporations and wealthy individuals don't just give money, they're investing and they want returns on those investments. Like we wouldn't see these corporations putting so much money into super PACs. They didn't think that was going to make them money.
Right.
So it's literally a legal form of corruption.
Yep.
And I think the biggest difference between me and the other candidates is that I'm serious about it and I'm walking the walk. So like you see my bus parked outside there,
It's a great bus, by the way.
Yeah. Instead of spending millions of dollars on TV ads, I used part of my savings to buy that bus, and I'm driving across the state, going to every county, gone to 47 so far out of 102, and I'm just talking with voters where they live and work.
Yeah.
And that message lands everywhere we go. And that's the biggest difference. If the other opponents were serious about reshaping and reforming the Democratic Party, we could do it right now in this election. We could all voluntarily say, no money for advertising, we're going to cap spending at a certain level, and instead we're going to have the League of Women Voters sponsor 7 debates across the state. And we can follow historical precedent and do the 7 debate locations where Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln debated for this very seat.
Yep.
And that would make those towns that often feel forgotten, like they matter, because most of those are in southern, western, and northern Illinois, away from Chicago. So that's the biggest issue I think that separates me from my opponents is I'm not raising millions of dollars.
Sure.
And Juliana Stratton right now has an ad out there saying she's not accepting any super PAC or corporate PAC money, which may be true, but it's kind of it's misleading because PACs can only contribute $5,000 to an individual candidate. Individuals can donate $3,500. So there's a difference of $1,500 that a corporate PAC can give that an individual can't.
Yeah.
But if you look at our FEC filing, the individual donors, there are corporate CEOs, there are owners of capital on there, and they're donating the max $3,500. So sure, you're not taking corporate PAC money, but you are taking corporate money. And you are taking money from wealthy individuals. They are investing in you, and you
on behalf of their influence in corporate America.
And they're expecting returns on that investment. So I think if Democrats want to be taken seriously on these issues, they need to start walking the walk. We need to live the values that we profess, and that's what I'm trying to do a new style of campaign. And people yearn for it. Everywhere I go, they see that, like, yes, finally a campaign I can get behind.
I imagine they would. And which brings me to a point. Young men voted for Trump in large numbers. Why do you think they did? I mean, Scott Galloway talks about, young men in this country are in trouble. They've been left behind. What does the Democratic Party need to do from a young man's perspective like your own to rally some of those voters back to gain trust in public servants?
Yeah, I think a lot of that came from, it's like an unintended consequence of like the Me Too movement of obviously the like sexual assault and sexual violence is abhorrent and wrong, and we need and women should be able to step up and say things and be
Sure.
heard and believed. But I think the unintended consequence of that was that it's okay, men, shut up. You don't matter. You're like
Toxic masculinity.
And so then it kind of pushes men into this other universe, like the manosphere, as some call it, where it's very conservative dominant. And it's the negative aspects of masculinity as opposed to the positive. And I think that's something, this isn't necessarily just a masculine thing, but I think it's something the Democratic Party needs to do is like stop kind of whining. I do hear like a lot of whining about like, oh, this is so bad, I can't believe this. Like, well, instead of complaining, let's offer something positive to the people that we can push forward instead of just saying how bad this is, how bad that is. That works. That's going to get attention. But if you want people to drive your message forward, they need something to carry, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with my campaign. A positive thing for people to carry, which is this idea that we can amend the Constitution to establish spending limits.
Yeah.
We can take money out of politics. People say it's impossible, and maybe this is where that like positive masculinity comes in. But it's like, well, I'm tapping into my Daniel Burnham, who says, make no little plans, for they do not have the power to stir men's blood and will not be realized. Like, make big plans, do the bold things, be the man in the arena, step forward and carry that positive message forward, and give people something to grasp onto.
Well, there's so much in media today, especially the way that the parties are sort of at odds completely all the time. You don't see much people going across the aisle and trying to sit down and have discussion. And I think in order for progress to continue, it's going to take younger gentlemen like yourself to be torchbearers, to start having real conversations about the influence of PAC money and how that's not certain. It's almost this sort of, in many ways, and I'll knock both parties here, but it's the idea that young people, so many of them are disenfranchised with politics and what's going on in our country, and a lot of it I feel like is a distraction tactic, right? Where what's going on is really not a war between Republicans and Democrats; it's a war on class.
100%.
And we're being distracted by both parties purposely, who've turned it into, the WWE of sorts in the political arena. But meanwhile, the middle class in this country is in big, big trouble. I mean, how are people of your generation going to be able to afford a home here in Illinois someday?
I don't know.
Right.
That's of course, like the people are forced to move out far into far suburbs to just try to be able to own a home, and like people don't want to leave Chicago. They want to be there. But I think you're absolutely right. Our struggle has never been between left and right. It is and has always been up and down throughout the entire history of mankind. It has always been up, down, class warfare. And I think the way it's a little bit more nuanced at the political party level, but I do believe that the parties care about one thing more than anything else, and that is their power and their control.
Sure.
The unfortunate reality.
Then we got to get term limits going.
Well, so I have a few things to say on that as well. But at the end of the day, it's the working class doesn't have a party.
No.
Right, and that's the problem. The Democratic Party likes to say that it's the working class party, and I would love it to be, and they're the only ones that actually advocate for it, right? I mean, Democratic Party is the one pushing the PRO Act. Republicans in Congress are all up there standing up and saying no, and you have all those conservative think tanks saying how labor unions are a drain on the economy.
I think we need more unions.
Of course, that's how we uplift American workers. If everyone is in a union, the rising tide lifts all boats. Like unions are the cure to poverty.
Which is interesting because a lot of it's interesting, especially in the labor movement, because a lot of the young men who are and women who are members of labor organizations, for the first time in history, wouldn't endorse in the last election. I think a lot of them are red. And that goes back to some of the guys that I'm speaking on that are feeling disenfranchised, young men, right? But the more I look at how society is evolving, especially with the advent of AI and where that's going to take us, is that if we do want to save the middle class, And let's not forget that unions got us through the Industrial Revolution, right? And if there's going to be another sort of revolution on the tech side, labor unions are what's going to protect civilization.
Yes. Yes, 100%.
You know?
I couldn't agree more. And it's an interesting phenomenon you see where like labor leadership typically will always back Democrats.
Right.
But as we've seen in the last decade, there has been a huge shift from the members themselves, who are a majority now in a lot of labor organizations, are now voting red.
Yeah.
So they're going against what their leadership is saying. And I think that is telling of the Democratic Party and how it's lost its mooring from the working class.
Because it started to take an elitist kind of purview.
And I wonder why they take an elitist,
tech
vision,
money,
right? Oh, money coming in, and so this member of Congress I know, he tells me that he spends 1 out of every 3 minutes fundraising, right? And he put me in touch with a mega donor in Chicago, and I spoke with him. This is when I was playing by the rule book, and I was supposed to ask him to throw me a $50,000 fundraiser.
Yeah.
And he told me that he had a number of members of Congress, 5 members from the Illinois delegation in his phone book, and he says he could call any one of them right now and they would answer. I'm like, well, isn't that the problem?
Yeah.
Like I can't, someone in local 150, he can't just like call up Sean Caston and he'll answer, right?
No.
It's like that's the problem, is that the focus has been, because of money, the focus has been on the donor class, and the donor class is infinitesimally small.
Very
It is
small.
so small. And they're spending a third of their time with them as opposed to the working class, the middle class. And that's how they've lost them. Because they don't. I asked this congressman, what's the cheapest paper towel brand, and he said Bounty.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's the most expensive one. How did you mess that one up so bad? Like,
yeah.
You couldn't even just say like come up with some.
You've
Costco
never been
brand?
to a dollar store?
You ever been to Dollar General? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. That's what I'm trying to do. And I've had these really, really rewarding experiences on the trail. I stayed at this campground in Chatham in Sangamon County, and the people next to me, they live there full time. And one of them is a mechanic, a non-union mechanic. The other one works at an assisted living facility changing sheets. Somewhere around half of their money goes to their lot fees and their utilities. And they're MAGA supporters.
Right.
And then I come down there, I have a beer with them. I'm talking to them. They see Democrat on the bus. They're attacking me. Like, what do you think about this and that and this and that? But by the end of it, when I tell them, like, I'm trying to take money out of politics and support the working class by strengthening and empowering and expanding unions, and they're like, that's actually like great. Finally, someone.
That's what we want.
So, yeah, and they started taking my campaign material. Like, I know all these people at the assisted living facility, and they got money. I can give this to them. They'll donate. They'll talk. I'm like, this is how we win again.
Well, for the Democrats, it is how they win again, because people are pissed.
Yes, I'm pissed.
Yeah. I mean. And there is a whole segment, and that's why I said a lot of them are men, right, from 45 to 25, that feel like the world has kind of passed them by, and that the opportunities are not existing for them the way that they existed for their fathers and grandfathers before them.
Yeah, but shareholder profits have been through the roof. So
right?
It's okay.
It's not okay. But my question is this: so like, you're doing something different because you see like Governor Newsom who's looking to be president, right? And he's going on podcasts to maybe he was on Rogan or some of the other ones, and now he's sort of mimicking some of the stuff that Trump does as far as trolling Trump does on Twitter, right? Is that the right way to go about things?
No, I totally disagree. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that's really effective to get clicks and attention and to grab people's attention, but it's not gonna carry a load, right? It's not. You need to give people something positive and hopeful to carry, right? And they will carry it for you. But if you're just attacking and you're trolling and saying this, it's going to get a lot of attention. That's why we're talking about him right now.
Yeah.
But it's not going to get anything done, in my opinion.
All right. So what's the campaign trail looking like for you in the next few months? You're going to need money, right? Have any of the labor organizations gotten behind you?
So the labor organizations have been kind of playing it on the sidelines right now for all candidates because they're
Sure.
it's because it's a primary that are afraid to step on any toes or like ruffle any relationships. But I do have backings of some organizations. Just they're a little more unofficial than official.
Okay. And then I have to ask you, because we only have about 5 minutes left, and it's been a great interview. Thanks for coming on. Largely, this show is dedicated to first responders, Irish American first responders. And you're an Irish American, and many of the Irish American first responders voted red in the last election. What is it going to take for the Democratic Party to gain the confidence of first responders and get it back after the whole defund the police movements and George Floyd protests, to get first responders to buy into the message of a new, younger, working class driven party?
I think it goes back to that radical authenticity and focusing on the working class, not the donor class. If we can be radically authentic and have a government that we want to believe in, a democracy that we want to believe in, with those with the best ideas, not the most money, get elected, I think that's where we'll start to see those first responders coming back to the Democratic Party, especially when we refocus it on the working class.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it goes back to what we said, it's not left versus right. We have to clearly define who this is against. It's us versus the 1%. That's what it's always been. And one party between the two is more aligned with getting the supporting the people as opposed to supporting the 1%. It's not totally aligned because there's a lot of corporate Democrats, but that's why I'm running, to change the party from within, to be that new generation of Americans that will reform the Democratic Party and reject the failed practices of the past that rely on the donor class, not the working class. I think if we focus on the working class, we will win those people back.
I think you're right. And, do you have any parting statements do you want to, make to our audience before we break? First of all, if anyone's interested in learning more about Kevin's campaign, you can go to runwithkev.com. He's campaigning all over Chicagoland, and he's a candidate for U.S. Senate. And the primary will be on St. Patrick's Day, so
yes, March
you can
17th.
punch it for an Irishman. That's
Yes.
nice. And look for the bus. It says Kev on the side of it. With Be the Change and a bunch of other scribblings on the side. Any last parting statements before we go?
Yeah, I'll just say that a campaign like this does not work unless grassroots people step up.
Yep.
So I need you. If this campaign is something that you want to get into, if this is a campaign you believe we should see more of, then reach out to us via our website, reach out to us on the socials,
Yep.
and get involved. I'm going across the whole state, all 102 counties. We got a big bus, plenty of room for all types of people on it.
Do you have a tour schedule online here? Do you know?
We don't have a tour schedule online right now, but I can say that we will be going downstate this weekend, so we'll be going down to DuQuoin, and later on, we'll be in several parades in September, most notably the Chicago Labor Day Parade down in Pullman. So if you plan on attending that parade or want to get involved, we are looking for parade volunteers to march with us in the Labor Day Parade.
Kevin, I wish you all the best of luck in your election. Keep fighting the good fight. And thank you. You can go to runwithkev.com to learn more about Kevin Ryan, candidate for U.S. Senate. We'll be back with more Hibernian Radio after these.